to another exciting episode of You Don't Know, so don't act like you do. Let me tell you, a couple of months ago we put out a video called The Assassination of Josh Reeves. Pretty compelling, huh? And, you know, some viewers may ask, why would I be so callous as to put out a video talking about the pending assassination of another human being? Well, let me tell you, he predicted it first, and he announced it on his YouTube channel, on his radio show, whatever. And I was thinking the exact same thing before he announced it for almost a year, because Josh Reeves connects the dots, and that's something that we're sworn to not do here on You Don't Know. If you want to, you know, take information you get from all over the place, wherever, you know, and connect the dots your own self, that's fine. But we don't do it on this show, huh? Because that's dangerous. And we love life. That's it, huh? That's it. Oh. So anyway, didn't really give us a lot of solid information about why he thinks he may be targeted for assassination and why it's also starting to look that way. Because in December of 2017, Josh Reeves contacted, I think, Bell's palsy. I haven't looked this up. I don't know anything about it. It's some kind of disease. You know, I don't think it's like a stroke, but it can have the same effects as a stroke, whereas half of your face becomes paralyzed. And that's what's happened to this young man. And I think he's actually coming back from that. But you know, it is kind of weird that, you know, he predicted he was going to be assassinated, then all of a sudden he gets this weird, very rare disease, you know, that can potentially life-threatening and everything like this. So that's why we're going over this material, and you're going to learn some things along the way. They're going to blow your fucking mind. They're going to blow your fucking mind. And you're either going to stop watching the video, or when we start talking about it, or maybe some subaltern programming within you will say, hey, no, this is boring, we're not watching this. But I guarantee you, you know, I can't promise right now what the video quality on this video right here is going to look like and shit like that. But let me tell you, man, we're talking about some content that's going to blow your fucking mind. So if you're comfortable with where you're at in your, you know, I don't want to say belief system, but your conception of reality or whatever, just go ahead and turn to another channel right now, because this is, we don't try to do stuff like this on every episode, you know what I mean? This is a very rare episode right here where you're seeing some pretty hard, not really hardcore, you know, grisly or gross, anything like that, but just the concepts themselves. Pretty hard to wrap your head around, because if 1/10 of the things that Josh Reeves is talking about, if they're even 1/10 true, then we live in a far, far different world than what we have been, you know, taught to believe. And Josh Reeves isn't some new age guy who, you know, going to talk about, you know, the aliens and having a picnic with the aliens or something like that. He's just the opposite. He's very down to earth and everything like this. He's, you know, focuses mainly on the. He's right on the border between the human and the non-human intelligence. You know, what is the deal? What's going on? You know, and so that puts him in an interesting position, and gives him a good, you know, narrative and a good perspective on these things. Not to mention the fact that Josh Reeves is a major investigator. He's had a TV show, a radio show for 10 years. He's, when Alex Jones got his first gig, mysterious somebody, Josh Reeves was getting such better reviews than Alex Jones was on some little country, radio station, that somebody came up and paid $50,000 to the owner of the radio show to fire Josh Reeves and put Alex Jones in his spot. 50 grand. And the owner of the radio station even apologized to Josh Reeves, but he said, I'm sorry, he said, I need the money's the money. You know, he had to take that money, $50,000. So Josh Reeves has been telling the truth from the very beginning, and he feels alone and isolated now, because many of the people that he came up with, and all throughout these years, decades or whatever, research, in his opinion, they've all turned somehow. You know, they're all bought out by the opposition. You know, I'm not even going to explore that idea. I'm just telling you a couple little quirks of Josh Reeves. I can tell you that I personally have contacted or attempted to make contact. I think he's maybe responded to me one time, but I've attempted to make contact with Josh Reeves at least 2 or 3 times, just to well, I hate to even put this out there, but just to make a small contribution because he needs one so bad. Because every episode he's talking about how these budgets and these goals and everything that they've got to have all this money coming in. And anyway, I was wanting to get an interview with him, and I'm not going to say you can kind of connect the dots, right, yourself and figure out what I'm talking about, because I don't these interviews that you see me doing with these compelling authors and experiencers. I mean, they got to be in this for real. Sure, some of them or a lot of them might have books for sale or something like that, but that's only natural. That only makes their just their ability to give us the information, right, wrong, truth, lies, whatever, it just makes the ability for them to give us the information so we can decide for ourselves. Makes it easier for them to give that information for us to receive it. So I don't have any problem with that. And of course, I've written several. I'm on my 4th book right now, so that's that's no mystery here. So anyway, Josh Reeves, proposes, quite a conundrum. What you're about to see is his own testimony, but let me tell you, Josh Reeves, people can make assumptions, but this guy does his research. He won't tell you anything unless it's totally based on fact. He is the person who uncovered the extreme right, the hidden, right, the Council on National Policy, not the Council on Foreign Relations, but the Council on National Policy, the CNP, which is an extreme right-wing group that has been behind the scenes with, the Bush administration and just basically the whole Republican Party, all along. Some crazy shit. And he's also found out the information about Rockwall, Texas. Is, for those of y'all who don't know Rockwall, just think Dallas, Texas, right? I mean, Rockwall, Texas, Dallas, Texas, what's the fucking difference, right? It's on the goddamn outskirts of Dallas. So, let me put it like this. Dallas, Texas is the oldest city in the world. At approximately 468,000 years old, Dallas, Texas is the oldest city in the world. There you go. You heard it here first. Right here, huh? The Rockwall in Rockwall, Texas is an artificial edifice. It's made out of materials that can't even probably be made today. They're so advanced on a molecular level. It does many different things. You cannot go see the Rockwall in Rockwall, Texas because it's 70 to 100 feet beneath the ground. And not because it was intentionally buried, but that's how fucking old it is. Like over 400,000 years old. And it's come to Josh's attention. This is actually just a side note, or at least for most people, but there have been remains of the elongated skulls found there. And y'all know from watching my show that the elongated skulls, that's one of my number 2 topics. My top topics on this show are the elongated skulls, and then Ghost Light Road, and then after that, giants. Oh, those fucking giants, huh? And giants should never be confused with the Paracas people or the Coneheads or the people of the elongated skulls. They're different. And anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked on that. But Josh Reeves has made some amazing discoveries and put together the dots, connected the dots on this Rockwall, Texas thing, using other people's data. It's not that he discovered this. The town is called Rockwall because there's a rock wall there, and it may have even been built to withstand a flood or something like that. But it goes around in a complete circle. It's very high, and it's made out of advanced materials. And when they were even trying to dig around it with a tractor one time, it started generating energy. In other words, it generates kinetic energy from vibration. I mean, it's just a very sophisticated wall. And it has been intentionally not covered up, it's just prevented from being prevented from being excavated. Let's say it like that. Rockwall, Texas, or at least 2 years ago, was the highest paid or whatever, the most high society county in Texas. In other words, there's a bunch of fucking rich people living there. Really, really fucking rich people. You ain't gonna go digging on their property. They're not gonna let you. They don't want, you know, $1,500 to let you dig a hole in their backyard or something like that. Huh? That's it. They ain't trying to hear about no holes being dug in Rockwall, Texas. That's it. So just forget about it. All right. I'm just trying to give some information, some background information about Josh Reeves. And so this is where now we're getting to the meat and potatoes. You know, none of that stuff I just mentioned will get you killed. Okay, everybody already knows about the Council on National Policy. And I've just now told you about the rock wall and that you can't do anything about it. So that's nothing big there. It's this third thing. It's a lot, you know, when I say he's connected the dots, well, I mean, this ties in many subjects together. But what is startling in the revelation that we're going to find out is that, and I haven't mimicked all of the research that Josh Reeves has done, but let me tell you, I've gone back and checked some of his research, and everything's checked out factually so far. And he gets all of his citations and everything just from the news and stuff. He just sits there and researches and puts this shit all together. And he's got his own, you know, ideas on the occult and stuff like that, the big, you know, scary boogeyman. And y'all know from watching this show that I personally am heavily involved in the occult. Let me say, nobody's told me what's going on at Rockwall or anything like that, all right? Or any of this, you know, secret, you know, right-wing stuff, you know. I'm going to let Josh tell the story, but just to, you know, not even to let the cat out of the bag, but just to summarize right off the very beginning, not to give a spoiler. But Josh is connecting the dots basically between the CIA, who is in the process of taking over Scientology, which has been infiltrated from the very beginning, but then Scientology basically infiltrated, you know, our intelligence agencies. It's a fucking wild, wicked tale. And what's more interesting about it is a lot of these famous authors, celebrities, and politicians are practicing Scientology without being a member of the Church of Scientology. That's very important to remember, because, you know, when you're a member of the Church of Scientology, you have to do these audits, which means, you know, it's kind of like taking a lie detector test and you're telling on yourself, telling them about every bad thing you ever done, so if they ever get pissed off at you, they can really turn the screws on you. Motherfuckers. So they want to get everything on you under the auspices of, you know, making you better or something, auditing you. So anyway, yeah, you're not allowed to read a book unless they say it's okay. You're not allowed to see your relatives or even your friends or even your relatives unless they say it's okay. That's what kind of organization it is, and that's what kind of church it is. Not that there's anything wrong with that. All right? I'm just saying, let's be real about this shit, huh? So anyway, let's just, oh, and another thing that's going to be tied into this is the Georgia Guidestones. Have you ever wondered who made the Georgia Guidestones? Have you ever wondered who single-handedly created and started the conspiracy theory genre back in the 60s? Have you ever wondered who ran off with Jack Parsons' wife? Beautiful wife. And Jack Parsons had a lot of game too, huh? Ran off with Jack Parsons' wife. You want to know who really pissed off Aleister Crowley? A big red-headed dude riding around on a sea ship out in the ocean, writing books, science fiction books, Dianetics, Scientology, Ron L. Hubbard. Yeah, that's going to come into play as well. So strap in, buckle up, buckle up. Get ready for a wild fucking ride here. You're on here with You Don't Know, the YouTube show, because if there's one cosmic truth, the truth is you don't know. So quit acting like you do, huh?
You know, I started seeing that and saying, wow, man, it seems like almost every one of these little component issues, no matter what it might be, whether it's HARP, chemtrails, 9/11, JFK, it's starting to look like the big experts, the people who've been brought out and presented to us as the big experts on these subjects, have all been connected back to Scientology. I mean, as you talked about, William Bramley, Gods of Eden, who I interviewed and read his book. He was one of these. He started a squirrel group, which is we know now See, I always knew that was the Scientology term for it. What we know now that we didn't know is squirrel groups are actually free zone groups. That's what they are. So that's what William Bramley, who wrote Gods of Eden, that's what he did. He joined Scientology and then went and used the information when started his own group separate from it. And his real name's not even William Bramley. It's Tor Dalin, I believe, is his real name. And so it just, it got me, golly. It just seems like almost every single individual little thing, that you can think about in terms of Scientology, the figureheads who brought those out are either connected to Scientology or are, in fact, are Scientologists. So I was, last night, again, I was just thinking, I was brainstorming, I was thinking, God, we got to filter everything through this new lens now. And one of the things that popped in my head that I hadn't thought about in a long time, one of the topics I hadn't thought about in a long time that I remember Jones talked about for a long, long time, many, many times, because he always tied it into his eugenics angle and the rest of it. And it's also something that, kind of through my own homework and research, no one's ever really seemed to come up with a lot of answers on the Georgia Guidestones. And most of what has been out there has been speculation. And I don't really believe based in any real actual fact. But it's something that conspiracy theorists, especially Jones and others, have used for many years to reinforce their claims. And it is fascinating. So I said, well, let me do some digging. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. That brings us to the big reveal. Ladies and gentlemen, first off, I got to tell you, I'm on fire. I mean, I'm just on fucking fire right now. First with the stuff that's in Spellcasters 1.5, now this. Again, as I've talked about, man, constantly I get that reaffirmation that I'm on the right path because I just accidentally continue to find these big revelations. And this is a big one. It's one of those, gotta, take a breath for a minute, figure out where to start, because this is a lot. So I started thinking about the Georgia Guidestones and thinking, you know what? It was one of those things, I've talked about this before. There has been times throughout my whole life where I've just intuited that something was true, just known it, like an instinct. No facts to back it up, nothing, just an instinct. Like it comes to you, it's in your head, and it's just like, oh my God, and it's true. And then you could start finding the details stuff. That's how the Rockwall thing was for me. When I first read about the Rockwall, coincidentally, we're in Jim Marr's book, Rule by Secrecy in 2004. Maybe we'll find out all the mysteries that we seek, and maybe we'll find out about this, that, and the other, and the ancient Rockwall in Rockwall, Texas. And as soon as I read that fucking sentence, all these experiences I had. I mean, me and my friend, when we were 16 years old, when we first got our license, we chased a UFO from Greenville, Texas, all the way to Rockwall, Texas. And right when it got to Rockwall, where the bridge, where the wall is, it zigged like this across and went and shot out through the fucking atmosphere. And, me and the same friend a few years later had a missing time incident near the Rockwall. And several of our other friends that we went to high school with had missing time incidences on that same thing. UFO sightings, everything out there for years. Weird. We had another incident that happened near Rockwall at the lake one time where me and my friend we still don't know what this was. It was some kind of it was an entity, essentially. We were out there late at night. We were young. We were like 20 years old and, bored, wanting to go hang out late at night, hang out by the lake. And we just went to go hang out by the lake this one night. And there was we saw these crosses where somebody had died, I guess, because you're not supposed to swim in Lake Ray Hubbard, which is the lake that covers up the rock wall, or part of it. It doesn't cover up all of it, but there are other things that don't even pertain to the rock wall, these rock dome things that they cracked that are buried under the lake. Anyway, somebody had died there by the spot we were at. They had wooden crosses up and stuff. And we were kind of sitting there looking at this, and as we were sitting there looking at this, It was some kind of spiritual energy, and it was not positive. It was there was some kind of evil force that like it hit me and my friend with such fucking force that it just caused us to both start crying instantaneously, like little girls. It scared the bejesus out of us. I mean, we were like sitting in a fucking Waffle House at like 4 a.m, holding our heads like, what in the fuck was that? All these experiences. As soon as I read those words about the rock wall, I knew instantaneously, even though I had no facts to back it up yet, didn't even know about the wall, haven't seen it, had no research. I just knew instantaneously by instinct that was the explanation to all those things I'd experienced all those years. And boy, was I ever right. I've told the story about 9/11 many times. Same thing on 9/11. I mean, as soon as it happened, I knew what it was. I was like, this is another JFK. This is a plot. You know, this is not what they're telling it is. I knew it instantaneously. No facts to back it up yet. Nothing. Just knew it. Same thing with this. There's just certain things, you know, and I'm finding that more and more with this. So I was doing some research, and I saw mention about some claim that somebody made that the Georgia Guidestones had something to do with Scientology. Like I said, after I got off the show last night, I was sitting here, you know, just thinking about that thought, you know, filtering everything through that, having to filter everything through that lens again, you know, kind of, excuse me, kind of like you do when you're first waking up to this stuff, you know, well, if this is true, what about this? And you're looking, you know, oh my God, that connects too. So when I had that sort of, you know, thought about the Georgia Guidestones, you know, I bet that's connected to Scientology. Start looking, boom. So then I was like, okay, well, I got to figure out, you know, if I can substantiate this. I got to figure out if there's something to this. Because I had that gut feeling again, that, you know, that suspicious feeling that it is indeed connected to them. And then found, you know, just a scant little mention that it might be somewhere on the internet. You know, who knows if it's true or not. But that's all I needed. Then the research starts. That's how much of this starts for me, you know. Sometimes it starts with a little hunch like that. I bet this, and then find one little thread, and that's all I need. I'm off to the races after that. So I had found this claim that not only is Scientology connected to the Georgia Guidestones, they were commissioned and placed there lock, stock, and barrel by L. Ron Hubbard himself. Now, I know that sounds unbelievable. It's unbelievable to think about. So, let's start off with the person who made this claim. Because I'm sure the first thing that people who don't want to believe this information are going to say is, well, okay, where's the proof, number one, and the person who's making this statement, what about their credibility? The person who made this name is a guy by the name of Steve Fishman. Now, this is what blew me away. This is where the real information. Okay, so let's establish first off that this guy is a credible source of information, and this is how we do that. Okay, because this blew me away. I can't believe I didn't come across this guy already in my research. Steve Fishman is the guy. I'd heard about this case, but I didn't know about the specifics. Steve Fishman is the guy who single-handedly is responsible for us getting, back in the 90s, all the information on Xenu and the Wall of Fire and the upper OT levels of Scientology, all that information which the church had hidden and no one outside people who had gone through the levels had known about. It's one of those things, kind of like I talked about last night with my information, and how I kind of carefully guard some of the newer stuff that I find, because once you put it out there, and I don't reveal some of the stuff till I put the films out, because once you put something out there, people can make 1,000 crappy YouTube videos before I can get a movie done on it, and then they never quote back the source. And I think this is one of those examples. I don't think this guy Steve Fishman gets the credit that he deserves, but I'm going to read some stuff here for you. This is unbelievable. So he was basically an upper level Scientologist that was pulling scams for Scientology, and he got caught. And when he got caught, they tried to fucking hang him out to dry, right? Like they do to, plausible deniability, just like the CIA does. You get caught doing something, by somebody else, even though you're working for the CIA, they'll disavow, any acknowledge of you're working with them to protect themselves. Plausible deniability. That's what plausible deniability is. The origins of Steve Fishman's dispute with the Church of Scientology lay in a fraud scheme that he conducted from 1983 to 1988. Fishman joined dozens of class action lawsuits by presenting stock purchase confirmations that he had stolen from his employer and forged. In this manner, he made approximately $1 million, as much as 30% of which he spent on Scientology materials and services. So think about that. So they get him into doing these scams and schemes and ripping all this money, $1 million off, and then just get him to, it's like money laundering. That's exactly how they do it. They get him to pull these schemes off. They show him, how to do it and tell him how to do it and instruct him how to do it. He does it, and then what does he do? He siphons off 30% of that $1 million, $300,000 into Scientology auditing stuff. And then if he gets caught, what do? Oh, we don't know this guy. He was operating on his own. Fishman was arrested in July 1988 and charged with several counts of fraud. The FBI also investigated the possibility of church involvement in the scheme. Fishman's attorney, Mark Nurek, had planned to use an insanity defense, offering false memory syndrome theorist Richard Offshee and psychologist Margaret Singer as expert witnesses. Fishman sat for a 7-part videotaped interview with Offshee and Nurek. In the interview, he discussed in detail various aspects of Scientology doctrine, his own Scientology involvement, and the church's response to his arrest. Fishman claimed that the church staff had ordered him to murder psychologist Uwe Geertz, who had knowledge of his Scientology involvement, and then for Fishman to commit suicide. So that's crazy. So he goes and testifies that not only was, were they involved, they wanted him to murder the psychologist and then commit suicide himself. And now think about that. How many people have probably, this guy didn't go through with it, but think about how many people we don't know about that probably did go through with something like that. At the same time, according to Fishman, he participated in a conspiracy with church staff to deflect accusations of church involvement by submitting fake documents and making false statements to his defense team. For these acts, he was further charged with obstruction of justice. The court ultimately blocked Nurek's defense strategy by rejecting both expert witnesses based on the testimony of opposing expert Dick Anthony. Fishman pleaded guilty to 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of obstruction, and the court sentenced him on July 20th, 1990 to 5 years imprisonment in the Butner Federal Correction Institution. Fishman later claimed that the church hired Scientologist inmate Luis Martinez to kill him in prison. He was paroled in mid-1993. According to Anthony, who had opposed Offshee and Singer, Fishman's criminal case was one of several in which they had attempted to introduce their ideas of coercive persuasion by religious groups. In 1991, while Fishman was still incarcerated, Time magazine published a highly critical cover story on Scientology by Richard Behar. The story mentioned Fishman's fraud conviction and the alleged plot to eliminate him and Geertz. The church responded by filing libel lawsuits against Time Warner, Behar, and Fishman and Geertz jointly. In support of his contention that he had been brainwashed in order to murder Geertz, Fishman attached a series of documents to a motion to reconsider venue. This filing has since become known as the Fishman affidavit. See, I'd heard about that. It included purported Scientology documents describing obstructionist tactics used in the event of an arrest. So, again, how to obstruct justice, how to do that. If you're caught and arrested with doing a crime that Scientology sanctioned, and of course that's what he did. He was served with obstruction of justice. Did 3 years on it. It included purported Scientology documents describing obstructionist tactics to use in the event of an arrest, as well as versions of operating Thetan levels 1 through 7 and purported excerpts of OT level 8. Nobody even knew there was an 8 at that time. Fishman's filing placed the advanced materials on record at the district court, available for viewing by the general public. Despite an unsuccessful church motion to seal the court records in efforts to keep the court files continuously checked out, former Scientologist Arnetta Lerma obtained the affidavit and posted it on the internet, after which it spread uncontrollably. In the process of suing Lerma for copyright infringement, the church confirmed that the copies of levels 1 through 7 were accurate. A federal judge court summarily dismissed the church's claims against Time Warner and Behar, finding that they had not acted with actual malice insofar as the church was concerned. The church dropped its claims against Fishman and Gertz, and Gertz's legal team served subpoenas upon such Scientologist celebrities as Kelly Preston, Juliette Lewis, and Isaac Hayes. The court record in the Fishman case remains open to the public. So think about that. This is the guy that blew the whole thing open. They tried to hang him out to dry. They tried to act like he was, so, oh no, he's lying. He's making this up. We didn't have anything to do with this. So he hung him out to dry and actually published on the internet the document, all the stuff about fair game, the obstructionist tactics, and all the stuff all the way through level 7 and some of the level OT8 stuff. Okay, so this guy, even though a lot of people didn't believe him, they didn't believe him at first, did they? He got caught doing a crime. He said, look, this is not all me. I didn't just come up with this on my own. Look at where the money went. They tried to fuck him. They tried to hang him out to dry. And he said, well, boom, here's all the secret stuff. Look, here it is. Here's the proof. So when I had heard that this guy had made the claim about the connection to L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology, and the Georgia Guidestones, upon doing more research into him and seeing, okay, this guy's, he's legit. We've established that. So, again, nobody had ever, even the church, that's so crazy. Even the church couldn't deny. They had to admit, yeah, that's the real. No one knew about the Xenu stuff, any of that. We're talking about before. This is what blew the door open for South Park to later do their Scientology episode where they had all the Xenu stuff and space alien stuff animated and drawn out with the stuff on the screen that said this is what Scientologists actually believe. That's the reason why none of that stuff appeared before that. South Park, as great as they are, they weren't being groundbreakers by doing that. They had just done that because that information had just become available shortly before they did it. So I had found there's a book written by this gentleman, Stephen Fishman, and the name of his book is Lonesome Squirrel. Because again, that's what the people they call it take the information off and start fucking free zone groups. And in here in chapter 6, he's discussing some of the conversations, and the whole book is all about his experience and the things he experienced while he was in Scientology. And I haven't read the whole book because I just found out about it last night. I'm not going to have time to read it, but I did find the piece of information I was looking for. And I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, I don't sensationalize stuff. I don't blow stuff up out of proportion. But this is bigger than I even expected. I mean, this what I'm about to read you, ladies and gentlemen, proves beyond any shadow of a doubt one I've been presenting in my work here on the show, in the film, The Spellcasters 1.5, and now in Volume 2 I'm working on. So this gentleman, Steve Fishman, we were just discussing, is relaying some information here in Chapter 6 of his book about a New Year's event, New Year's Scientology event, in which he was talking to one of the upper echelon guys, Pat Broker, I guess is this person's name. And, you know, God, this is unbelievable. This also proves another, you know, I'd had this hunch. See, I'd heard that L. Ron Hubbard was very anti-Britain, UK against the British government, very anti-British government. And I'd heard that a lot of the stuff about like the Rothschild stuff and a lot of that conspiracy stuff getting nailed down had really traced back and had been with him because it was kind of an axe he had to grind. So if you watch Spellcasters 1.5, there's a clip that's one of only 2 interviews ever known to exist with L. Ron Hubbard, where he's talking about, it's in black and white, it's in Spellcasters 1.5, where he's talking about the British government, how they don't like him, this stuff. And he also mentions in there that they were going on expeditions to look for ancient civilizations and lost civilizations in the Middle East, in Iraq, and those places. See what I'm saying? Hubbard was going and looking for the same exact stuff that Hitler was. He was looking for these evidence of lost civilizations and whatnot, because as we've established, all of the connection between the Anunnaki stuff and Sitchin, now that Hubbard believed that tied in with Scientology, and he was going on his own expeditions. But listen to this. This is just unbelievable. This is, again, from C. Fishman's book. He says, the New Year's event was so memorable for me. Pat Broker, the executive director of the Commodore Messenger organization, that's a Scientology organization, spoke about what the second 30 years in Scientology would be like. Now, let's stop right there. Dynamics was written 47, published 52. So started Scientology early 50s. This meeting, this conversation that I'm reading here from his book, took place in the 80s. So the next 30 years of Scientology would be the 90s, the 2000s, and now. What else is that? That's the era of Alex Jones, the rise of the conspiracy culture, reaching its biggest point ever, right? Okay. Now listen to this. No longer would we have to be persecuted by suppressive governments because Scientology would be the government. Now think about that. That's their plan over the next 30 years, starting in the 80s. Now think about that in terms of everything I've talked about with Donald Trump and all these people, like the Duggar family, like I talk about Spellcasters 1.5. That alone was a huge revelation. Just reading that sentence, I'm not near done, though. No longer would we have to be persecuted by suppressive governments because Scientology would be the government. This is talking about the plan for 30 years, for the 90s, the 2000s, and now. Somewhere in the corner of a remote, isolated section of the planet would be the Museum of Psychiatry and Barbaric Mental Health Antiquities, which will stand as a painful reminder that the brutality of man's darkest hour shall never be permitted to be repeated again. Never shall we Scientologists rest, Pat Broker vowed, until the very last asylum and the very last prison becomes the very next auditing room. So I love that. This thing, see, again, that's what I've always talked about, even before I knew all this stuff about Scientology and Jones, is, you know, any of these people that talk about how they want to overthrow the government and the rest of this, you always got to be leery of that, because one of the things you never hear out of these people's mouths is what they want to replace it with. Because 99.9% of the time, anytime there is an an overthrow, what that government is replaced with 99.9% of the time is worse than what was there before. And that's always been my concern with these CMP types, Christian Dominionists, all these people. But that's what they want to do. They want to turn every prison and every psychiatry office into an auditing office. Again, this is beyond just the planet, folks. These people literally want to take over the galaxy. Pat mesmerized the audience, and the standing ovation was the longest on record, a full 17 minutes. Privately after the ceremonies, Wally Hooker gave me an oral lesson on my financial rescue hat. That's financial rescue. That's a lot of stuff that he uses. These are Scientology has their own language and stuff, and their own terminologies for things. But listen to this. Back in 1967, he explained, L. Ron Hubbard, Ron isolated those suppressive industrialists and financiers who by their evil acts were dramatizing a catastrophe that had occurred in this sector of the universe some 75 million years ago. Those individuals who were intimately connected with most of the Fortune 500 companies either owned, controlled, or did business with the Rockefeller Foundation, the Bank of England, the Trilateralist Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Trust, and of course, the World Federation of Mental Health and its token subsidiary, the American Psychiatric Association. How many fucking people even knew about those things back in 1967? Not a lot. Certainly like I've talked about, nobody even knew about the Bilderberg Group in the late 90s. You were crazy to talk about it. But he's connecting. Again, let me read that for you again. Ron isolated those suppressive industrialists and financiers who by their evil acts were dramatizing a catastrophe that had occurred in this section of the universe some 75 million years ago. L. Ron is associating, again, this is the key, folks. This is the key. L. Ron is associating the Rockefeller. Think about that. Think about that laundry list I just went down. That's the fucking laundry list of the goddamn whole fucking thing that conspiracy research is built on. Those groups. And he's relating them to the whole Xenu dead alien soul thing that happened in this sector of the universe 75 million years ago, and that the Rockefellers and the Bank of England and the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberg Trust and the World Federation of Mental Health and the American Psychiatric Association, all the people involved in every one of those groups, every single person is reincarnated, and they're here now in this life, in this time, because they're here to do evil that Xenu didn't finish back then, because, of course, we all reincarnate, and we're all just, constantly reincarnating back here on Earth again. I didn't even count on this, folks. This is beyond, I don't even know what to say. This is beyond what I expected. I've already shown you the evidence, folks, in spades, that these people have been behind the conspiracy movement, but this is beyond. This is in 1967. L. Ron Hubbard is talking about how these. So the whole basis, folks, for all the conspiracy stuff. Again, filtering it through that new lens. Now, when you listen to Alex Jones talk about all these things, George Soros, whoever it may be, these guys believe that the people who are their enemies, the people that work in the psychiatric parts of the big bankers, Rothschilds, whoever, are the evil reincarnations of Xenu. This is what they believe. This is why they take this conspiracy stuff so seriously, folks. I knew, see, this is the key. I had never been able to find it. But it was, again, another one of those hunches. But I'm not done. Give me a minute. We still haven't gotten down to the Georgia Guidestones yet. We're not done. I knew that there was something to do. I just had not been able to figure it out. This is it. I have not been able to figure out what has been the obsession. Because it's not only that the Scientologists and CIA approved figureheads have become the only people that have been able to rise to the top throughout the decades in the whole conspiracy genre. But it's the fact that it seems so ensconced within the belief system of Scientology itself, inseparable. Meaning that whatever the implications and the real importance of this type of conspiracy research are, it goes right to the heart of Scientology itself. But I've never been able to prove that. Well, that proves to be any shadow of a doubt. I'm not done. While Ron was on his naval vessel, the Royal Scotsman, which was later called the Apollo, he cognited that recovering funds from corporations with these affiliated with these suppressive persons and groups would be an effective way to handle all of their out ethics, corporate theft, and fraud, and return a portion of this to the third dynamic in order to create a stable cause point from which all this evil or Inthea could be turned around. Financial rescue was Ron's way of making things right. Peter, it turned out, had been trained in financial rescue when he did his internship at the New York org in 1974 or 1975. What was the catastrophe that occurred 75 million years ago? I asked Wally. I thought the history of the Thetan began 76 trillion years ago. Wally started to laugh. You are confusing the time when we were trapped in human bodies with the date we were packaged and shipped to Earth as prisoners. 76 trillion years ago, we were tricked into occupying physical universe bodies, and we have been forced into accepting the false cycle of life and death of the body ever since, when in actual fact, none of it is real. A Thetan cannot die. How can a spirit die? He just has amnesia, going from body to body, life after life, failing to remember anything. Wow, I exclaimed. Now, the other date, 75 million years ago, was when the suppressive Emperor Xenu sent in his armies and mercenaries to gather up unwanted segments from his populations, and he subsequently freeze-dried us by injecting a chemical solution of alcohol glycol into our lungs and shipped us to Earth on spaceships that look like commercial airline DC-9s. Maybe that's why I have such a fear of flying, I said. Possibly. Earth had a different name back then. It was called Tegiak. Tegiak? I asked. What does it mean? Oh, it means jail. In what language? I wondered curiously. Markabian, of course. Don't you know anything about the history of Theta? The Markov Confederacy was the planet in between Mars and Jupiter, which exploded 6 years after Xenu did this to us. And now it's known as the asteroid belt. It's completely devoid of life. What happened to the freeze-dried people there? I queried. We're all here. That's the WOG society we live in. You don't think they became that crazy for nothing, do you? I suppose not, I said. Anyway, once Xenu transported all the Thetans over here, he blew them up with explosive hydrogen bombs, which were suspended over some of Earth's most active volcanoes. It was a real noisy mess. How did we live through that? Well, it didn't end there. After the volcanoes exploded, the Thetans were captured by electronic force screens known as theta traps, which pulled them down toward Earth through several electromagnetic fields. And then the Emperor Xenu had the helpless beings packaged electronically at 2 automation plants into clusters, which were actually several thousand Thetans stuck together as one. Where did all this happen? Where were these packaging centers located? Everybody knows that, he scoffed. It's all part of Scientology history. One was in Pala, Hawaii, near the Mauna Loa volcano, and the other was in Las Palmas in the Canary Islands. Ron visited Las Palmas in 1967. It was a gruesome sight even after so many millions of years. The place was run back then by the personal psychiatrists of Emperor Xenu, who had conducted cruel experiments such as dissecting bodies right down to the skeleton and then photographing these sequences so that they would be implanted into the permanent memory or time tracks of the trapped Thetans in order that the ferocity of recalling any of these incidents at any subsequent time would kill them dead. It sounds horrible, but how could just remembering an unpleasant incident kill you? Well, if you started to freewheel or were unable to turn the mental image pictures off, you become trapped in the images, and in not being able to eat or sleep, you would simply catch pneumonia and die from exhaustion. The same phenomenon occurs if you get stuck in a nightmare and can't wake up, because a nightmare is nothing more than an effort to locate oneself. Obviously, Xenu did not want his secret scam to be undone. This is, after all, a prison planet. And until Ron discovered it, no one had ever survived confronting this material before. No one, certainly, until Ron found this incident, which is known as the Wall of Fire. How did Ron survive it? Look, I can't tell you. That's confidential material. That's what you audit on OT3. I've told you too damn much already. Just tell me what happened to Emperor Xenu, I begged. Did he get punished for doing all this to us? Wally looked at me rather reluctantly, but since he had not finished his apricot nectar, he condescended to answer my question. Xenu was captured for a while after some of the people's loyal officers revolted. Ron was the valiant leader of the counter-rebellion, of course, in another life. That's what he's meaning. The loyal officers imprisoned Xenu on a mountaintop on the island of Madeira, and for a short period of time he was forced to stay inside a wire cage that had an external battery. But Emperor Xenu had his own renegades and mercenaries, and a planetary war ensued. For years, Earth was a radioactive dump and a complete desert that was known throughout the Galactic Confederations as the evil place. It's for this reason that no other spaceships ever come here, even to this day, except to drop off their criminals en route to saner planets. We couldn't have all been criminals, could we? What about Ron? You wouldn't even dare call him a criminal. No, certainly not, Wally complained with great annoyance, because I was not allowing him to end the conversation. Now listen to this. Ron came here some years before Xenu. Let me start that over. Ron came here some years before Xenu started dumping his undesirables here. Ron's landing party, this is in his previous incarnation. Ron's landing party touched down in what is now Elbert County, Georgia. In fact, last June, I went there with Ron to see the place. This is early 80s, folks, when this conversation is going on. I went there with Ron to see the place, and he decided to construct a monument commemorating the original landing site. He wants it completed by his next birthday, this March 13th. Can I go and see it? I questioned. It's not finished yet, Wally stated. All I can tell you about it is that it's one of Ron's personal projects that he's become involved with. He's not planning it as a dissemination program for Scientology. The name of it will be the Georgia Guidestones. And he's planning to turn it over to the state of Georgia when it's completed so that it can be preserved as a state landmark and never be torn down. Ron just wants to commemorate the first landing site on Earth. That's all. He's very sentimental and nostalgic when it comes to history, although few people know it. Where is this place? I asked. It's in the center of a farm on a hill on Route 77 between Elberton and Hartwell, Georgia, right in the middle of nowhere. Ron always liked to go to Stonehenge when he was in England, and it's going to look something like that, but more modern. Won't his name be on it as a sponsor or something? He doesn't want that. He doesn't want that at all. When we went there, he told everybody that he was a former concrete worker named Robert C. Christian, whose great-grandmother was from Georgia. It was a marvelous mock-up. Of course, he did tell Joe Findley, the man at the Elberton Granite Finishing Company who was building it, that he was a war hero in World War II, which is certainly true. There's only one thing that puzzles me, though. Why did he choose the name Robert C. Christian? Ha, 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 Willie laughed. You're pretty smart picking up on that without having done OT7 yet. Well, now that I asked, why did he? It was just Ron's way of getting back at Emperor Xenu for what he did to all of us. Ron has a very good sense of humor, as well as the capacity to use a little sarcasm whenever he has to make a point about something. I don't understand. What does Xenu have to do with the name Robert C. Christian? Xenu, like all the rest of us, picked up other bodies in his subsequent life cycles and is far better known for one of his more recent identities than he is for Xenu. Why, I asked. Was he Hitler? Wally looked at me as if I had just arrived from another world and didn't know a fucking thing. He shook his head from side to side and gulped down his drink. No. Xenu wasn't Hitler, he answered. Xenu was Christ. I'm just going to let you let that sink in for just a minute. Holy fucking shit. That's all I can say. Think about that for a minute, folks. Let it sink in. Think about that in terms of everything I've already talked about and revealed to you in my films. I mean, oh my God. That explains just the stuff I was even talking about last night. You know how about when I was first making The Secret Rite, the very first one, 2009, and I came across that image of Phyllis Schlafly, you know, standing in front of a Scientology cross, and, you know, Beverly LaHaye and, all, you know, the rest of them funding all that stuff to do with Scientology, and they put that L. Ron Hubbard stuff in there instead of Christian. It just didn't make sense. Why are all these CMP types and these right-winger Christian types associating with L. Ron Hubbard and trying to get his teaching? My God, folks. Think about it. We've known that they've been operating on information we haven't had for years. They believe Xenu is Christ. Or one of his incarnations was Christ. This fucking explains, and Elron put the RC Christian thing there as a tribute to the whole Xenu thing. And the fucking Georgia Guidestones were the landing spot where the first landing took place of the aliens that came down, that Elron was a reincarnation. Oh, fucking A. Again, this is from the book of the guy that is responsible for entering into court documentation that the Scientologists could not get sealed, all the OT levels up to 8. This is just huge. This is massive. This may be one of the biggest revelations that I've ever come across as far as this information. Again, if you haven't seen Spellcasters 1 and 1.5, you need to see those films to really, truly grasp how unbelievable this is. I mean, I've seen it. Everybody, I've been getting all of your comments, listeners, your comments, your emails out there for months now, you know, since I've been onto this, because you guys have started to figure this out. I mean, you know, just last night I had comments from people saying, you know, you're really onto something here. You've really cracked this. But this is just beyond. Again, this stuff goes to the heart of what they believe. They believe that stuff now, and the people that are alive now on this planet were also incarnated way back then, and he's connecting Rothschilds and Trilateral Commission and all this to being reincarnated evildoers of humans. I mean, God damn, folks. And it makes sense. I just, you know, because Alex Jones really went off about the Georgia Guidestones so much, and I always felt like he was lying. I always felt like Alex Jones knew something about the fucking Georgia Guidestones that he was not saying. I don't know why. And all the research and all the stuff, it just felt like something that we should have already cracked by now. And here is this conversation that took place in the 1980s at a fucking Scientology thing in somebody's book that did it. Again, this is going to be one of those things now. It's going to be one of those things, but you heard it here first. I don't think anybody else has found this information, or I don't think anybody else is. It's going to happen now. It'll probably happen now. You watch. But just so everybody knows, we have a record. We have proof. You heard this shit here first, folks. I mean, any of the questions, any of the things that we wondered about the Georgia Guidestones and stuff, now we can put it to rest. But I mean, this again, the universe, whatever you want to call it, the creator, it always leads me to the info, folks. I mean, it always puts it in front of me. That's why I don't get frustrated. I mean, you know, it's tough, man. This is the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. You know, and it's tough not knowing every month if we're going to be able to continue or make the next film or whatever else or get our operating costs. But I've never given up. And this is why I've never given up, because when I'm on the right path of something, I start getting big time signs and signals, just like I do if I'm on the wrong path or something. I get big time signs and signals. But I've never had as many happen to me as have happened since I've been involved in this research. And folks, as you can see, I mean, this is deeper than I ever imagined. And this proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that all my suspicions I've had and all the research that I've shown and proven up to this point about the connections to the entire conspiracy and so-called truth genre being completely created and controlled by the CIA and Scientology, folks, is absolutely beyond any shadow of a doubt the truth. As hard as it is to accept, it's hard for me to accept it, folks, but here it is. And God damn it, this is why we got to have your support. This is why we have to continue. I don't have a choice now. I mean, I'm well past the fucking point of no return. I can't turn back now. Again, it's just why I implore each and every one of you to just help us, donate, fund us, get us. We need some cash in here. We need a fucking war chest so we can start trying to get this stuff to reach more people. We've got the information. We've got to get the stuff out to more people, and it's all it takes is money. If we can get that, we can start, you know, promoting this stuff and buying ads at places and putting this stuff out there. I want to do it now. I mean, this is just, I'm just on fire. I feel like I fucking did when I started 10 years ago again, because there's no question now. If you had any doubts, and I understand, I mean, this is crazy shit. I can understand, but folks, there's no doubts now. I mean, I've made a fucking excellent case in these films so far, but this is just, I mean, this is the end. This proves it.